Welcome to The Rig. Big, bold, breathtaking drama. An aptly phrased deep dive into one of Scotland's most epic productions of recent years. This session is brought to you by Royal Television Society Scotland, sponsored by ScreenSkills and supported by Prime Video, the broadcast platform behind the series. My name is Paul English, and it's a pleasure to host today's panel discussion in which we'll drill deep for some beneath the surface insight into the making of this landmark show. Before we meet the panel, let's take a wee look at what we're here to talk about.
Before we get to today's work plan, I know some of you have been waiting for your ride home, but you're going to have to wait a while longer.
How long, Magnus?
Until there's a ride available, we all have work to do.
Power outage across the accommodation block.
Could it have been seismic?
Well, we keep punching holes in the earth. Eventually, it's going to punch back.
Hold on!
It's kicking back down here!
It'll come back.
Push it, Alwyn. Shut it down.
Oh my God.
Kinloch Bravo to Coast Guard. I repeat, Kinloch Bravo to Coast Guard.
There's no radios, there's no phones, there's fog, these shakes. What is going on out here?
This'll split the crew.
They're already split.
This ain't normal. We all know it, but we don't want to see it.
Since the fog came in, some of our crew have had a psychological difficulty.
What's happening?
That's what you get for diving into the abyss.
Nature isn't a balance, it's a war.
I'm telling you, he's trying to warn us. We're all finished. Wake up!
He's got to be dealt with. My job is to get you all home.
You don't negotiate with nature.
You're all being reckless!
It isn't something new. It's something old. And it's waking up. We're listening now.
Fantastic stuff. And as you can see, The Rig went big when it came to drama, and that means there's a big team behind the show. Joining me on the panel today are some of them. Writer and director David McPherson, launching into the market with his first series, The Rig, with a creative writing flair that extends to published novels, comic book fantasies, and performance poetry. What a way to start, David. Producer Suzanne Reid, known for shows like Trust Me for BBC One and American mystery series Guilt, not to be confused with her own homegrown Guilt. Wild Mercury managing director and executive producer of The Rig, Derek Wax, who has worked as a drama executive for many years, including on shows like Lip Service, big favourite of mine, Humans, and international Emmy Award-winning miniseries Capital. Production designer Rob Harris, who has been a designer for over 30 years and worked on multiple high-end TV dramas and has been nominated for 3 Primetime Emmys and 4 BAFTAs for production design. Stephen Corrin, who is a visual effects supervisor who works on both film and television shows such as The Abyss, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and Discovery of Witches. Welcome to you all. So unfortunately, John Strickland, director, and Ian Glenn, the lead member of the cast on The Rig, have been unable to join us today. They've been detained on other projects. So David, first of all, let's start with you. You can take us back to the start, from a time before underwater supernatural entities that have been around for millennia. That far back, we're expecting you to go here, David. Where did the idea come from? Where did this all start?
No pressure there. So this all started, I guess we started back in 2018, and I was really just my very, very beginnings in the industry. I had sort of been trying to become a writer for a long time, and as you said, various different guises. And I had quit my job in the summer of that year to focus on my writing, and The Rig was actually, it was one of the first projects that I took out. And in terms of where the idea came from, a lot of the advice for new writers, I think particularly in Scotland, is to do something small and easy to make. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something big and exciting and really push things, be ambitious. I think reach as far as I could, and particularly do something rooted in Scotland. And for me, the idea of a rig, it came from my own upbringing, and in particular, my dad, who works in the offshore industry. He just retired recently, but he worked in the industry all my life growing up, first building oil rigs in the yard in Nig, which is near where I went to school, and then later going offshore, both in the North Sea and then all around the world. And he used to come back with all these strange stories of this kind of other world, which I think in Scotland, oil's played such a big part in our history, but it's still a kind of an other place. Like if you've never been to one of these rigs in the middle of the ocean, it's very hard to get an impression of what they're actually like. And so I really want to draw people into that amazing world that's out there.
Can you give us, can you cast your memory back to some of those stories of that other world? Some of those kind of weird and mystical things that you maybe brought home with them?
Sure, I can do. Well, I mean, we always used to, when me and my brother and sister were growing up, we always used to joke that maybe he was a spy, because he would just go away for 2 weeks and you wouldn't see him. You would get a phone call every few days, but and then he would come back, but you never had any idea, was he actually out there and what were they actually doing? So it was a kind of a mystery, a great mystery. And I imagine he spared me some of the more rough and ready and gory details of what can happen out on these rigs, but he would always come back with, strange goings on, and a lot of the things in the show are not quite as far from real life as you might think.
Okay. Oh my goodness. You mentioned about the kind of the advice for writers at your stage in your career to be, focus on something achievable and smaller. This is not that, as you've acknowledged. At any point in the process were people telling you this is too big, you're biting off more than you can chew with this? Was that kind of early feedback that you were getting at all?
No, it wasn't actually, and that was I was kind of expecting that, but actually it was the opposite. Particularly, when we were developing with Derek and Wild Mercury, we really wanted to. It's one of the great things about Derek is that he embraced that ambition, and we wanted to push further into these areas. So, for instance, our show, it's not based on IP, it's not anything like that. It's an original creation that I'm the writer, but I certainly feel like it was a real team effort that we all came together to push things as far as we could. And Amazon, similarly, when they came on board, often their notes were go bigger, go further, lean into the genre more. So it was a really positive experience in terms of crafting that world.
Okay, we'll come back to you to talk a little bit more about the ongoing process of crafting the story, David. But a question for you, Derek. Now, tell us about Wild Mercury's origins of the story with the rig. How did you work with David to get it ready for taking to broadcasters?
Well, I guess the origin story really, as David said, it goes back to 2018. He came in for a chat. We'd read a script of his, which we'd loved, a sort of thriller set in Scotland, but just a great voice, distinctive characters, quirky tone, humour, and he just came in for a general chat. And that, we asked him about what he'd love to write, and he came up with this extraordinary world, which immediately just felt different to anything I'd seen on TV. Obviously, there'd been Deepwater Horizon and big films like that based on actual real life events, but the idea of doing a fictional immersive drama and this extraordinary workplace drama, as well as something which would go into other territory, supernatural territory, and have philosophical themes, and it just felt so epic and rich. So I think what we did, we don't always fund a script. Sometimes we take an idea straight to a broadcaster and see whether they want to fund a script. But I think with the streamers, the message we've been getting from the big streamers is that they really do prefer to commission development from seeing a script, and particularly with a newish writer, which David was, that they're being approached by hundreds of different projects and production companies. It's much more they've really got something to base their assessment of something on if they can read a script. So we funded that script from David, worked with him a bit for probably a few months, but his ideas were brilliant. The characters he was generating and the story and the sort of arc of the story, and then we took that script to Amazon, and they immediately just wanted us to come in for a meeting and talk about it.
Okay, so it seemed that Amazon were on board pretty quickly then.
Yeah, I mean, after I think the script, we probably got the script in June 2019, and July we'd heard back from Amazon that they wanted to meet. It was a very it was a really exciting call to get that they responded to the world, to the characters so immediately and instinctively. And that was, obviously that wasn't a green light for the project. That was a whole year of work developing. They commissioned a second script and a Bible, which is an outline for the whole series from David. But we also had John Strickland, our director, interested and sort of attached at that point anyway, because I thought he was maybe the perfect director for it. He really enjoyed, he really liked the script, and his creative vision was part of our pitching to Amazon as well, because to sort of for them to be able to see what the visuals might be like. He created a lookbook. I'm saying this because he's not here at the moment. He can't be with us, but so there was David's wonderful script, and then there was John's sort of vision, of what the scale of it could be like in terms of the look of it, and that was what we moved forward with.
Derek, tell me why John? You say that you thought John would be perfect for it. What was it about his track record of work that made you think that?
Well, I mean, I'd seen his work on shows like Bodyguard and Line of Duty, and he worked with us on a show called Troy, Fall of a City, did the last block. He draws out very raw and very real performances, very naturalistic performances from actors. He doesn't show off camera angles for the sake of it. He's got a great ability to immerse you in a story and just to make you feel invested in those characters. And I think we had 12 or 14 characters in the script. So in a way, we needed to feel for those. It's not just about the big action sequences. We really have to be emotionally invested in those characters. And John, for start, actors really love him. All the actors he works with want to work with him again. And he is also has a great. So he had an editing background, actually, John. He has a great understanding of sort of narrative storytelling ability that comes, I think, from his editing background, which is brought then into years of experience as a director. And also he had an ability to deal with technical challenges, which we knew were going to be complex on this show, sort of big action sequences involving cranes, people 50 feet off the ground, boats colliding with the rig, all that sort of stuff. John has a sort of experience and an assurance about, I mean, I hadn't worked with him in this particular world of rigs and water in the North Sea, but I just the work I'd done with him before when he was staging the Siege of Troy. He just has a sort of calmness and unflappability when dealing with things that would have otherwise been, sort of stress directors out to an enormous degree.
Yeah, in the face of such huge scope, I guess those are very kind of key characteristics that you would hope for. Suzanne, could you tell me from your perspective, given where Derek has just talked about the scale of this production and what had to be achieved, what was your first response? Did you panic, or did you relish that challenge?
I always love a challenge, unfortunately. So I've sort of gone through my career, always seemed to choose the most difficult job that is out there. So clearly I relish a challenge, so, and the ability to work with such a fantastic team as well, so talented and lovely people too, so when I came on board, obviously Derek and David and John were on board, and Rob was on board too. So it was to look at, such a wonderful team, it would have been hard to say no to something like that. And also filming in Scotland, was fantastic. To be able to do a show this large in Scotland was brilliant.
Yeah. Could you talk to me at this stage a little bit, I suppose, about, the thing that I take from watching the rig is there is a character that has no name. Obviously, there is a you know all present character there, but there is an incredible cast and names the likes of which we do know: Emily Hampshire, Martin Compston, Owen Teale, Mark Bonner, and so on and so forth. Talk to me a little bit about pulling those names together, and of course Ian Glenn.
So, I mean, casting was, you know, for the rig was such a fantastic process. You know, it was really enjoyable. And we worked with Kelly Valentine Hendry as our casting director, you know, and she's wonderful and talented. You know, so we worked together, you know, Derek, John and I with Kelly to pull together lists. But, you know, Ian and Martin and Emily were always, you know, high on our priority list to get on board. Derek,
anything you'd like to add on that score?
No, I think it was just fantastic that pretty much the first people we went to for the roles that you know, wanted to do it, but not just wanted to, but they were passionate about it. They really loved the script, and they really signed up to the vision of the show. So there was a degree of enthusiasm that for me went beyond what most actors, you know, they sign up for a job sometimes, but this was more than a job for a lot of them. And it was going to be during COVID, we were going to be filming. So there was a huge challenge of coming up, not being able to even, you know, socialize at the end of the day, as sort of people wearing masks all around them. It was a really difficult time. But I think the commitment to the vision of the show was what made it. And also it was a great opportunity for us to cast people we didn't know as well as the more recognizable names. We had a chance. Kelly was brilliant bringing to us, you know, actors for the roles of Baz and Heather, and other people who were, and Easter. And I didn't know those actors, but I think the show has got a great blend of more senior actors that we do know, and some younger people who were every bit as good. You know, there was no, for me, there was no weak link in that you know, in that cast of characters.
David, tell me, when you're writing, when you're at the writing stage, are you fantasy casting in your head?
Well, I think the thing about the casting that we achieved is it's beyond my fantasy. You know, I don't necessarily write with actors in mind, but you know, the caliber of people that we got, I was I was blown away by it, and I kind of I was very happy. I couldn't believe that people like Ian and Martin and Emily and Owen and Rashenda and, you know, our whole cast was just Mark Bonner as well, and Eamon Elliott and Stuart, just excellent. And like Derek says, I was really excited to find those younger members of the crew as well, the cast as well. I thought that the casting, I couldn't have imagined a better set of actors to embody the characters. So, and you know, all our cast was so, I'd never actually worked with professional actors before. That's how green I am. And just to see how brilliantly they invested in each of their characters, and, you know, we gave them various research and set them up with equivalent real people who do their jobs offshore, and to see the great dedication they brought to each of the roles was fantastic. Yeah.
Rob and Steve, I'm going to come to you both on production in just a second. But before I do, David, given what you've just said there, can you tell me how it felt when you sat down to watch this for the first time? You know, you've been on a turbocharged arc in this project here, you know, and to see these people with your words in their mouths, with such an incredible production spec behind them, producing this phenomenal piece of drama. How did that feel to you?
It's a bad thing for a writer to be able to say they don't have the words for it, but, you know, it was a really incredible feeling, and particularly our premiere in Scotland. You know, I got to bring my family to that, and I was sitting with my dad, and, you know, and he had helped me with the script and getting that realism all the way through it, and being able to do that with him was a very meaningful and proud moment for me. You know, I sort of think it's only because he did that job for all those years in that very hard environment, very dangerous environment, you know, that I'm able to do this job. And it was great to be able to kind of give that back to him and watch it with him. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Okay, Rob and Stephen, let's get beneath the surface, as I said earlier. Spoiler alert coming up here, folks. The series wasn't shot offshore on an oil rig in the North Sea. Let's have a look at some of the big design in action.
I guess I've never been on such a big scale production where they're making waves here. Like, not waves like making waves in the office, they're making actual waves.
Action!
The main challenge is finding your way around. It's huge. It is going over 3 stages. I mean, I've never worked on anything so big. It's colossal.
We have wind machines, we spray and wet down the sets all the time, just to create as much of the real elemental North Sea conditions. We shake the sets as well to physically create movement, and then the camera's moving as well, so everything we can do to give the actors a real life experience while indoors, we do.
The art department have done the most incredible job on this show. They've built a whole oil rig in sections, you know.
It's pretty much a working rig in terms of where you go. You know, you walk from one end to the other, you go from one room into the different bit, and you really get a sense of the geography and just how tight-knit it is for everybody.
This is the production. It was reasonably daunting. You have to work through it kind of slowly and see how you can create enough set for actors to work on in a realistic way. And what I didn't want to do was put actors against blue screen and then it all happened later on. I wanted as much real rig for them to work on as possible.
We are rolling.
You know, listen, hey, I could be on a rig as far as it's so real. It does so much of that imagining for you.
It took a while to work out which bits of the rig we need to build and which bits were going to be visual effects.
So our crane shots will start there and pull back underneath.
I wanted shots that could sweep through in and around the sets.
Now, the interesting thing about this shot is that it's actually made out of 3 major component parts. A full CG component, a live action exterior set, which is where you see Rose walking across the bridge. And then once she steps through the door, that's actually shot in 2 different locations. So the door had to be the magic wipe between where she was and where she ended up. So what the director really wanted was to have it feel like one big continuous action. So what you see through that doorway is a guy putting his jacket on. He wasn't actually there on the day. So what we had to do is we had to create a 3D version of him and a 3D version of that room, so that as we come into that space, we magic wipe with a foreground actor so that we're inside the 3rd and final part of the journey.
Got there.
Really interesting insights there, and a real indication of the size and the scale of this production and what had to be achieved and what you have achieved. Rob and Stephen, tell me, you know, this, am I right in saying that from my perspective, this is a film set we're looking at here? This is way bigger than a TV production set.
Yes, it's a big set spread over what is a very big studio, which was lucky. I mean, the studio is fantastic space to work in, and obviously, as John said, he was very keen on having as much set there as possible where the actors are working, which obviously was then enhanced and extended. But yeah, it was big, and the problem was to split it down into its component parts, which could then be connected either by cuts, editing, or visual effects from Steph. So it was a big jigsaw to fit together. Yeah.
Yeah. Stephen, from your perspective, what were the challenges? You know, when you're seeing this on the page from the start, what are the challenges that you can identify?
Where can I start? There was a lot of challenges, I guess. The stage itself was about 20% of the exterior, and then we made about 80% of the rest of the rig, all the way down to the water. We had to make all the water, we had to make all the fire, pretty much everything that wasn't able to be built So from that point of view, it was a huge challenge. And anytime you were looking outside of a window, you were looking at some CG or looking across. Anytime you walked across the bridge, or even when you were down on the spider deck, which is down below by the water, we ended up replacing and adding all the water, even the pillars, extending all the way up to. So yeah, so we did a lot of filling in of the background, really.
Okay, Rob, tell me about how much of that rig was actually physically built.
We built there were two portions to the rig. There was the production portion and module, and the accommodation module, which were connected by a bridge, which was kind of integral to the story. So we built the ends of both ends of the bridge and the bridge itself. To connect it together, we built the control room, which was a sort of fully functioning control room, an accommodation block, helipad, various engine rooms. So a lot of it was built, but as Steph said, basically, obviously, on a stage in Scotland, you can't put the sea in, so there were huge amounts of extensions. But most of the time, when actors were acting, most of the set was there. There were some exceptions, obviously, but there were stairs they could walk up, there were doors they could go through, there were bridges they could walk over. Even if it was enhanced and extended, that they were working in a real environment, which John was very keen on to start off with.
Was any of the rig built outside?
We went to the dry dock, which is just next door to the studio in Leith, and we built the actual, it's called the spider deck, where the rig actually meets the sea. There was a scene down there, so that was the only bit that we built outside of the studio.
Actually, once we finished filming the first block, some of the set was struck, and we had done a LiDAR scan, a sort of a laser scan of the entire set. So when it came to the final scene, we actually replaced the entire heli deck from the sort of helicopter landing area backwards, because it had already been struck, and we needed to fill in the gaps. So that's all sort of invisibly sort of sewn in there, but it was actually the real set, but just a digital version of the real set.
So we were looking at the waves coming up on the rig. Is that out in that's out in the dry dock, is it?
There's a particular scene where they go down to the spider deck and a wave hits and kills somebody. That was actually outside on the dry dock, but there was water which was added with waves, which was obviously visual effects, which was connected to the studio set inside.
Okay, all right, yeah. Tell me about using these studios, because these are studios that have not been with us for terribly long, and they are a new thing in Scotland. What was it like to get your hands on the kit there?
I mean, it's a very big space. So basically, we had enough space to build in different places, different studios, different parts of the set. So we could be working on the control room, which was in one part of the stage. And it's a very, very big space. It's very tall. It's got very, very solid floors, because most of the elements of the set were actually real metal, and they were very heavy. And we got an awful lot of real pieces from the shipyards next door. So the floor could take an enormous weight because of its previous use. So there was no problems there, whereas a conventional studio floor probably wouldn't have taken some of the weights which we put on it.
Yeah. Stephen, you had some fairly huge challenges, given that we were dealing with matters underwater, and we were dealing with a dense rolling fog and storms out at sea and so on. Is it possible for you to pinpoint the hardest parts to recreate in the sense that you did?
The trickiest thing of all of it was maintaining it to look the same across the entire series. We had there was so much. I guess David wrote us every challenge that there is in the book, and the only thing he didn't give us was a car chase, because you couldn't put one out there. But we pretty much had every possible challenge, which was great. It was really good to have that. the seamless sort of sewing together of things, of sets and CG, and making it all feel pretty realistic, that was the biggest challenge, because just the sheer quantity. You know, sometimes it was maybe 50-60% of an episode had visual effects in it, and not just the big stuff, but just small stuff. There was a lot of care and attention that went into every pixel that went up on that screen.
Now, we saw in the clip that we just looked at there, you talked about Emily Hampshire's character walking into a room that didn't have someone in it that had to be, that was a VFX. Is there anything that you might be able to surprise us with by telling us that we wouldn't necessarily have known from watching that it was a VFX?
Well, actually, she's not really there for about half the shot. we had to actually animate her from the beginning of the shot, so
Okay.
she only really appears about a third of the way through, 2/3 of the way through the bridge. There's a lot of those sorts of shots where actually on the spider deck, for example, we ended up replacing all of the water. So there are 2 or 3 scenes down there. We ended up redoing all the water for the entire, just to sort of extend it out into the distance. There's a night scene that comes in the later episodes. We replaced all of that. So we did a lot of invisible things. There's the big stuff, of course, but there's a lot of invisible little things that would be surprising. I can't even remember.
Suzanne and Derek, have either of you worked in the nautical sphere before?
I've worked on water before. I've certainly worked on projects that have had scenes in the water, but nothing like the rig. Nothing, set out in the middle of the North Sea, 100 miles from Scotland.
I was one of the producers on a miniseries for BBC and HBO about 14 years ago called Tsunami: The Aftermath, which was a series about the tsunami in Thailand, the 2004 tsunami. And we did have to create something big, but it was only for a fraction of a minute or two, the impact of the tsunami. But after that, it was all about the aftermath. It wasn't about so it was a very short moment with Chiwetel Ejiofor, the actor, looking in a mirror in a window of his cabin on the beach as the tsunami. You see it as a reflection, and I think it worked really well. But it was a very short thing. This was on a different scale because it was through 6 hours of television to create water and water effects and fog and ash and all that sort of stuff, and to create the sense of them being in the middle of the North Sea with no possibility of rescue, hundreds of miles from anywhere. And I think it was really important to create that, both with the characters, with the acting, with the script, and also with the visual effects and design, to create that real sense of that they were stuck on their own, marooned in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're looking at the fog as a visual effect. Was the ash a visual effect, or was there something physical in the air at that point?
It was a big mix, actually. We added ash, we took ash away, we added fog, we took fog away. We did a lot of because when you're with these giant smoke machines and wind machines, they're kind of blowing stuff around all the time. In fact, there is a little thing you're asking about, hidden things. There's a little scene where Owen walks out of the fog, and he didn't have the right outfit on, and he didn't have the right hat on, so we ended up having to replace his hat and then take his hat off later on, and he was covered in ash, so we ended up having to clean him up and get rid of the ash. It's actually it's a beautiful testament to invisible visual effects, because you would never know that it's not there.
We've had a look at some of the action already, but time now for another scene, one of my favourites from the series, the Fulmer Flare stack scene, one that anyone who has seen it will certainly not have forgotten. A very challenging scene, I'm sure, to execute. David, could you introduce that from the writing perspective?
Yeah, I can do. So this scene comes almost exactly at our midpoint in our series. This is the end of episode 3. And essentially, because of all of the strange goings on the rig, the rig's flare stack has gone out. And the purpose of that is to burn off excess gas that's produced during the refining process. And if the flare goes out, that's in the real world, essentially what you get is then a big cloud of gas starts to build up around the rig. And you need to relight that flare before any kind of disaster happens. And this is a kind of, it's something that they do in real life, although we've extended it to its most extreme example. As Hutton says in the previous scene, you know, they do really do this where you have to shoot a flare through the flare stack, but we've sort of amped it up to its maximum potential.
Okay, right. Well, let's have a look at that now.
Magnus, the flare. The flare is out.
Shit. Everyone inside now!
A lot of the scenes required quite a few shots to tell the visual side of the story. If one of those scenes is Fulmer walks along a crane, fires a flare gun and runs back, in 2 sentences, that's, you know, a lot of work.
So the flare stacks went out and you're talking the possibility of a blowout and a big explosion, which we all know is not a good thing on a rig.
Back in the day, before we were HNS compliant, when this used to happen, the stack goes out, someone's got to get out there, get as close as they can to the cloud and shoot a flare through it. Boom.
That's too risky.
I'll do it. I had one pretty amazing stunt, which was a thing these guys used to do in reality, and I've saw videos of it, when the flare stack, when the light burning off all the excess gas, when that goes out, they used to relight it manually with a flare gun, which sounds absolutely insane, and it is absolutely insane. Basically, it's me out in the crane, kind of creeping out, and then firing this thing, and then just hightailing it as quickly as I can back the way out.
It was a challenge to shoot because obviously we had a huge crane in the car park surrounded by blue screens, and then even though you're only 12 foot off the ground, we still had to have all the actors with safety harnesses and wires coming off them up to other cranes to hold, you know, in case they slipped off, they would fall.
So we were all harnessed up, and, you know, I'm slightly blasé about it. I don't know, wear the harness, it's not that far. Do it, honestly? Do I? Yes, Ian, keep the harness on, it's just a safety protocol. And say, oh, okay. And one of the sequences I had to sort of run out and get him.
1, 2, 3, up!
That's coming!
And then I just lost my balance and I fell off. It was an awful kind of sinking feeling went through the crew that I would done some serious damage to myself, but I no, fine, actually, no, I was okay. I could see why I wore the harness now.
Even though it's a very quick sequence, there are a lot of shots in it that require working out and coordination between visual effects and cameras and stunts and special effects in terms of real flame.
I mean, they set me on fire a wee bit. I definitely felt a wee bit of that heat on the back of the neck.
We have 3 or 4 major components to the sequence. We have the crane, which was shot outdoors. We have the actors who are standing on the accommodation block bridge on the stage. And then we have the full CG shots where we've had to digitally create the actors.
He's only doing this to prove he's still one of us.
Here, Rose and Kat are having a conversation, and we feel that Fulmer is walking across the crane in the background through the form. So these 2 things don't live in the same world at all, but we've got to make them look like they do. So to do that, in fact, this is an interesting thing that we do all the time, we actually broke the rig. So all the pieces that you look at in the background aren't actually where they should be. It's where we want them to be. So we rearranged the production module to put the things in the right place so that the actors could be looking at the right part.
Time to shine.
We actually managed to do it for real. The flare pyrotechnic ignited the actual gas that was coming out of the top as opposed to a manual ignition by us.
It went bang straight through the middle, so it was a good shot. And then just turned and sprinted back to Ian and Abe.
That's coming, Fulmer.
Cut there. Thank you. Very good.
Cut. All right, everybody, we'll take lunch there. In camera lunch, we'll be covering out the dialogue for
Coming board.
361, Martin.
Now, ambitious dangerous. There's a whole lot to consider there. Suzanne, tell us how practically do you even begin to set about achieving something like that? I mean, it's such an incredible scope to what you have to achieve in that scene.
Absolutely. You know, where do you start? You know, we had so many meetings, you know, discussing, you know, how we would do this. And, you know, because we wanted the real flare stack, the elements of it, it was decided not to do it inside the studio. But also we had this massive crane that Rob had found, and actually getting it into the studio, even though the studio is enormous, we decided it was better to do it in the car park. Although that would have left us open to the elements, but we were very lucky on those days to have good weather. So we basically decided that we were going to do it in the car park, and we then had to go, you know, discuss with VFX, you know, how to achieve, you know, such the big blue screen and all of that without any, you know, rigging. At least in the stages, you've got rigging that you can hang the blue screens from. So, but yes, it was many meetings discussing with all of the different departments, you know, how we were going to do that. And, you know, we had, Rob had got this fantastic crane, which was also a real crane. We could operate it, you know, it actually worked. So yes, so it was lots of discussions between the departments, and, you know, it turned out immense. It's fantastic.
Rob, I don't know about children and animals, but water and fire seem to be potentially quite a tricky combination to be working with in something like this as well. You know, there was, you know, we had live flame in that scene there. What kind of considerations are at play when you're pulling something like that off?
Obviously, the safety of the actors first. So they were all, as the clip said, they were all harnessed off, and they were wearing sort of. Martin had some special clothing on for the fire. There were people standing by. Yeah, and you know, it's basically a combination of big lumps of metal, fire, wind machines, and camera moves, and the whole thing was a huge sort of, the whole show was a huge sort of team effort, really.
Tell me, if you can, about what it takes to get an actor sort of, you know, ready for a scene like that, because, you know, this isn't just delivering dialogue to camera, not to underplay that at all, but, you know, there's an action scene and he's working with live flame. What do you need to do in order to have him in the right frame of mind for that?
Well, I mean, that's where John Strickland's exceptionally good at working with actors and explaining all the different parameters of what he needs and what the practical elements of fire and harnessing, and he puts them at ease, and you know, really that's how he gets the results that he does, really.
Derek, could you pick up on that?
Yeah, John's you know, as Rob says, is terrific at putting actors at their ease and making them feel safe. And we also had a fantastic, very supportive and experienced production team with Suzanne, Matt Brown, our line producer, health and safety, all the people that will make an actor feel safe. But also, you want the actor to want to do it. And you know, with Martin Compston, he's got a very he loves the opportunity to do, I wouldn't say dangerous stuff, but he loves the opportunity to do exciting stuff, and to you know, some of Fulmer's stuff is, as a character, is stuck in his little room dealing with communication issues with big screens. So this was an opportunity really to sort of have, he volunteers for this job, and he's putting his life at risk, and it's so much of it is about him throwing himself into that and immersing himself in that scene. And you know, it's a fantastic combination of VFX, John's direction, and the actors. You believe the actors' performance. You believe that they're out there on that, you know, on that crane. The nerves, the anxiety, the whole team watching, Rose watching, and all the other people fearful for their lives, for the lives of the people, all contributes to the sense of reality of it.
Thanks, Derek. Stephen, tell us, if you will, take us behind the curtain. Tell us what you brought to that scene that we can't see the joins. Point the joins out.
Well, of course, to me, the thing that sells the shot so dramatically is the camera work. You know, the camera makes you feel like you're floating in midair in this sort of dramatic scenario which is unfolding in front of our eyes. I think that's one of the biggest
sort of bonuses to the sequence, is that sort of gentle flow to the camera. And there's a couple of top shots where we're looking down, and I think that's where the magic is, because you get a sense of the jeopardy that that Fulmer is in as he walks out onto that crane. That was kind of, to me, the biggest bonus. We added a lot of small things to sell that. We added lots of wind. There's little bits of gas in the air that kind of catch your eye. You don't really know what it is, but it adds to the depth and the parallax of the shot. I think those were the things that really came across, the most. The fact that everything is a complete cheat and not real is the sort of invisible bit. And I think that's the enjoyable bit. The explosion at the end is also another one of those things where we use the practical fire and then we built and added on top of it. It's always better when you have something physically there. It always works out better.
Suzanne, is this the kind of scene that keeps you up at night in terms of health and safety imperatives, or is the whole series that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. When you're working at height and there's fire and all of that, absolutely. But we had the right team, doing all of that, and it's about. We rehearsed with the actors. They were on wires. We had brilliant wire guys. We had great health and safety and a fantastic stunt coordinator. So so I know with all of those things that it was going to all go well, and we would get everything that we needed. Obviously Ian talks about in his piece about thank God for the wires, because actually he slipped off of the crane and the wires caught him before he hit the ground. And that's the thing with anything that's going to be potentially dangerous. It's just about putting in all of the measures to it's risk assessment, so we've had all of the right measures there. So, but it's always exciting. I love doing those kinds of sequences, and it's a lot of preparation and lots of meetings and lots of discussions. But those are my favorite things to do, is those big, massive set pieces.
David, those big set pieces were obviously, these are the fruits of your imagination. Did they, the creative team, did they go beyond what you had envisaged, or did they capture perfectly what you had in your mind?
I think, beyond, far beyond. I remember it was funny when we were making the show. We had the physical set to work with, but it was actually quite far into the process before we saw the rig as the audience would see it. And then to bring those two, the physical set already was gigantic. One of my favorite things to do is, at the end of the day shooting, I would just go and find a place to sit and take it all in, because what Rob had managed to create was just incredible. And then to take that, then when we added on the VFX element and to see the scale of the completed project, it just completely blew me away. I'm very indebted to our whole team and all the effort that they put in, because it just, I knew what was happening, and I was still gobsmacked by when I finally got to see the finished show. So, Derek,
the theme around nature fighting back against man's abuse of the planet and so on. It's a very it's very much part of the zeitgeist at the moment. How important do you think that theme was in the success of having this production made?
Well, I think for me, it was one of the things that attracted me so much to the script and the project. And it was something that was very much in David's mind, the environmental themes. But what was exciting and what felt so original and unfamiliar to me, because there's obviously been many dramas where monsters have attacked. So you've got Alien and The Thing and those sorts of things. Where what was so fascinating about this was keeping it mysterious and intriguing, so that you didn't get straight away 20 minutes in the monster crawling all over us and killing people. This was much more enigmatic. What the hell is going on this rig? What does the fog mean? What does the ash mean? What's this thing going on with the tattoos, and why does Lek die in the shower? They're trying to figure this thing out. It's a giant puzzle, and it felt very exciting to me that I think it was partly, after we'd gone into development with Amazon, if I remember correctly, that we started doing a deep dive into some of the stuff to do with the Storegga slide that created the North Sea, and David and me and our script editor Adam, we just got very excited by all these different ideas. Because the North Sea wasn't always the North Sea; it was once land. You could walk from Scotland to Denmark. All this stuff was so great that it went into the script. There's characters talking about it, and then as you go further into the series, this sense of deep time, of the hundreds of millions of years that created the oil on the North Sea, the forests that were there beforehand. And so then this whole concept of, which I love from David, of they call it the ancestor, obviously, but it is just something trying to communicate from way, way before us, which lasted much longer. And Rose, Emily's so terrific in her performance, the sort of sense of curiosity and fascination with this, this idea that, we are just the tiniest little split second, mankind, human beings, we're just the tiniest little split second in terms of the age of the Earth, and that hundreds of millions of years have gone before us, in which other intelligent life forces might have been. We know so little. We think we all know so much, because we always think we're at the cutting edge. But that's what people probably felt in the 14th century. They felt they were at the cutting edge, and then the 9th century, and in the Roman times. We don't know how much we don't know, and it could be that in 100 years from now, 1,000 years, if humans are still there, that we'll discover that there was a whole other intelligent life hundreds of millions of years ago that it was buried and didn't. So what I loved about it was the fact it was science fact as much as it was science fiction. It really asks you to think about these really big philosophical, geological ideas, anthropological ideas, and it exercised and excited the imagination to think about these things. And we wanted to play with those ideas.
I wonder, David, to what extent the seeds of those ideas came from any of the conversations you had with your dad. Did he come back from his time on the rigs thinking those things?
Well, it's interesting. So, because one of the things that I wanted to do with the show as well was to challenge what I would say is the stereotypical view of the oil worker, which I think, and that's what I wanted to get into, the nuance of this. Often when you see there aren't that many shows set on oil rigs, but when you do see them, it tends to be a sort of a hyper masculine, it's Bruce Willis in Armageddon and all his crew and things. And I wanted to, in all the research that I did and from other people that I know who work offshore, it's an environment that takes all sorts. There's all different kinds of people. And in terms of the environmental theme, I would always say my dad would class himself as an environmentalist, even though he's worked in the oil industry for over 40 years. He actually, I used to get him to try and retire to become a nature photographer. He's a big fan of nature photography. So I think that, there's a lot of nuance outside of the normal environment versus industry dichotomy, and I really wanted to dig into that and to show and to show on the other side as well that I would class myself as an environmentalist. I used to work for a climate change organization, but I sometimes get the impression that I guess people on my end of the fence, they fail to appreciate the amazing achievement that has been created in the North Sea. This engineering work was thought to be completely impossible when it was first started, and it is a testament to all those engineers and all the mechanics, welders, electricians, all the people who put this world together, that have powered us and our whole economy for the last 50 years now. Oil has been out there, and we've been out in the North Sea drilling for oil. So I wanted to bring those things together and really get into the nuance and sort of open up questions about what does the future hold, and what do we owe to these people who have given so much, so that we can drive our cars and have our lights on and our heating and all. It's not just that stuff. Oil is everywhere. So what do we owe to the planet, but also what do we owe to them as well, and how do we balance that equation going forward?
Okay, folks, those are my questions. Thank you very much. We could go on and on, but we have some questions from some of the Royal Television Society members who have sent in one or two questions of their own. And I guess just picking up on what you just talked about there with the theme of environmentalism being something that's personally important to yourself, David. I don't know if this is a question for Suzanne or for Derek. How did you work to lower your carbon footprint on set, and how did you use the Albert calculator?
I'll take this one, Derek. We did use Albert, and we worked within what you need to do to deliver. I couldn't tell you how Albert works, but our amazing production secretary completed all of that information. So we did get our Albert certificate, because it is very important that productions are sustainable and do think about all of that. So the wood from our sets went off to be recycled, and we used the trains wherever possible. We had special bins to put rubbish and then recycling. So we certainly did our part there, and were successful in getting our Albert certificate.
Can you tell us, Suzanne, exactly what the Albert certificate is, what the Albert calculator is for people who maybe don't know?
I'm not an expert in Albert, but basically you put in all the information of everything that you've done. So, from, what cars are driven, what your unit drivers drive, how much fuel you've bought in, whether the studio is signed up to a green energy provider, what wood is used for sets, to make sure that the wood is sustainably grown. So it's every detail. Do the caterers use recyclable products? So did we use plates and proper knives and forks, and or did we use wooden knives and forks? So it's that kind of detail that needs to be completed, but I have to confess I've never had to complete it myself.
Well, it sounds like an arduous task for someone, but thank you for giving us an overview of it. A question from Joanne LaRue. We know that typically writers will develop the first season of their own personal series over many years before it gets produced. This is a question I was going to ask you, David, but then they only get a few months to write season 2. And now we know, of course, that there is going to be a season 2 of The Rig. So Joanna asks, are you going through a hellish sprint right now, or were you able to develop season 2 in advance?
Well, I'm pleased that we're going out after the announcement, so I can answer this one properly. So we were very lucky in that we've been developing season 2 for quite a while now, and Amazon showed great faith in us to allow us to do that. So yeah, I feel we're not in a mad sprint. No, I actually feel we're very well on my end. I feel like I'm more prepared this time than I'd never done it before the first time. So I'm comfortable with how things are going, and I'm really excited it's been so great to be able to continue the story and to come back to all our characters, and yeah, we'll have a wee bit of a wait, but I can't wait for everyone to be able to see it all again when we come back.
If I could just jump in there, just to say, reiterate what David said, and because it really talked only about the beginning of Amazon, the process with taking the script to them, but their belief in the show, their support of the show, has really been huge from all the way through. And so, what was fantastic was getting commissioned to write for David to write more scripts quite early on in the process, so that we were still editing series 1 and they were commissioning scripts for series 2. And obviously we didn't have a green light until decision until series 1 had gone out, but at least there was an opportunity to develop, which would have made it, otherwise it would have been impossible to have hit the ground running and gone into season 2. So Amazon's faith in the show was really helped us there.
Okay, thanks, Derek. Folks, we're almost out of time, but we have one last question from King Loafer. So I'd like you all to answer this one as quickly and as concisely as you can. We'll start with you, Rob. What's your fondest memory of production?
Standing in the freezing cold in the snow in an empty dry dock in Leith, trying to get huge, great lumps of metal welded together and freezing cold, basically.
Okay, Stephen.
There's a scene in episode 6 where our heroes meet the ancestor, and I watched Emily talk to a hanging lamp, and I believed that she was talking to a creature of ancientness. It was great. That was really good.
Great. Suzanne. Oh, you're on mute, Suzanne.
I think there's lots of fond memories of, everything that we did, doing things like the crane sequence, actually achieving something like that. And, when you call wrap at the end of the day, having got everything that we needed to do, it's that sense of achievement. So, but there were so many moments of that. And also just, every day, being able to achieve everything that we did with such a wonderful cast and crew, so it was a real privilege. So I have lots of, happy memories and favourite bits.
Thanks, Suzanne. Derek?
Well, no, I have wonderful memories too of so much, of seeing so much shot. But I think just the very first time that Rob unveiled his set to us, and we could walk around and see the control room for the first time, and see all the different sets, the recreation room, the briefing room, all the different, what Rob often modestly calls lumps of metal, but which had come together in a way that really did create a very visually authentic, massive rig. We'd been on rigs, we'd all gone on a research trip to a rig, and suddenly we were seeing one, coming to life in the studio. I mean, with all its hugeness and vastness and complexity and detail. I mean, that was just really wonderful to see the actors walking through and also getting these huge excitement at just what had been created, even before we started shooting. And then there was all the great stuff, seeing some of the amazing scenes being shot. But that was a really great moment for me.
You're almost painting the picture for me. I feel like I've been there myself. Okay, but finally, David, given it was your idea in the first place, when you actually saw this production coming together, what was the bit that tickled you most?
Well, I mean, I think the sets for me were incredible, and like I said before, it was one of my favorite things to do, was to hang around at the end once everyone else had gone and just be able to sit in that amazing environment that Rob and others had created. I really loved that. But I think for me, the most meaningful thing for me, as a very much a newbie to all this, it was to be able to work with our entire team, who are so experienced on all across the board, our crew and our cast. And for them, I was very nervous, are they going to think, here's this new guy, what does he know? But it wasn't like that at all. And they really, to be treated as a creative professional by people of such high caliber was very moving for me. And I'm very grateful to how well the whole team supported me, particularly people like John, who was our captain throughout, and he was able to take me under his wing, and sort of you just knew everything was in safe hands with him at the helm. So that was great.
Great, thank you, David. Well, folks, thanks very much for your time, your candour, and your insight. I wish you all the best with Series 2. And congratulate you on the success of the first outing. So thank you to each and every one of you. And thanks to everyone for watching the session. It was a big show, and it was beautifully deconstructed here today by our big panel. Please join RTS Scotland's mailing list, or indeed become a member. It's free for students to be kept up to date with everything that's going on throughout the year. Coming up at the end of April, there will be an in-person event about fast turnaround topical television as we get up close with the team behind hit football podcast and TV series A View from the Terrace. And of course, the RTS Programme Awards are fast approaching in June. Thanks to ScreenSkills and Prime Video for supporting the session today, and of course to all the panel for giving up so much of their time and insight. We all look forward to Series 2 coming soon to Prime Video. And if you enjoyed seeing the behind the scenes clips, a quick reminder that you can access more bonus content like this with X-Ray on Prime Video. That's all from me. Thanks to every one of you. Goodbye for now.
Thanks, bye.